The egg sizzled, a sharp, angry sound in the cavernous silence of the kitchen. It was the only sound, save for the rhythmic tick of the grandfather clock in the hall, a relentless metronome counting out a life Charlotte no longer recognized. Her hands, usually so steady, trembled as she cracked a second one into the cast-iron pan. Morning sun streamed through the picture window, a cruel spotlight on the distant, imposing silhouette of Mount Rainier. The mountain was a constant, silent witness, a monument to the day her world had fractured, its snow-capped peak an indifferent observer of her 4-year-long vigil. 4 years. 1,461 days since Robert had kissed her goodbye. She could still conjure the sensation if she closed her eyes. The slight scratch of his morning stubble, the familiar, comforting scent of dark roast coffee and expensive aftershave that clung to his favorite fleece. He'd promised to be back by dinner. His eyes ate the color of warm honey, alight with the simple joy of a solo hike. It was a day he said he needed, a way to process the seismic shift of retirement, to trade the sterile scent of the operating room for the clean air of the pines. He had disappeared into the wilderness he loved, and a part of her, the part that knew how to breathe without thinking, had disappeared with him. The grandchildren in Oregon knew him only through photographs now. His plans to teach them how to cast a fly rod, reduced to just another sad story. The shrill ring of the telephone was a physical assault. It ripped through the quiet, startling her so badly, the spatula clattered from her numb fingers, landing on the tile floor with a crack. She stared at the phone, her vision tunneling on the glowing letters of the caller ID. Her breath hitched. Mount Rainier National Park. Her heart, a long dormant thing, began to hammer against her ribs. They hadn't called in over 2 years, not since the last official search was quietly, apologetically called off, leaving her in an endless limbo. She snatched the receiver, her knuckles white. Hello? Mrs. Charlotte Henley? The voice was male, professional, yet buffered with that gentle practiced caution she had come to despise. It was the voice of someone about to deliver terrible news. Yes, she managed, her own voice a reedy whisper. Mrs. Henley, this is Ranger Mike Patterson. We need you to come to the station. Some hikers found a backpack yesterday, lodged in a beaver dam in the Nisqually River. We've traced it through the GPS tracker's serial number. Ma'am, it belongs to your husband, Robert. The words were stones, dropping one by one into the still deep well of her grief. She gripped the cool granite of the countertop, a frail anchor in a world suddenly tilting on its axis. A backpack. After all this time, a monstrous artifact from a buried life, dredged up from the muck. The county sheriff's office is already here. The ranger's voice pulled her back. Can you come down to the Longmire station? We have some questions. Charlotte's mind raced as she drove the familiar, tortuous route into the park. Every curve in the road was a ghost, each mile saturated with a specific memory. Here, they'd watched a black bear cub tumble down an embankment, Robert's laughter echoing in the car. There, he'd told her he'd finally set his retirement date. Now, the majestic firs lining the road seemed to press in on her, their shadows long and menacing. The ranger station parking lot confirmed the gravity of the situation. 2 stark white police cruisers sat alongside the usual forest green park vehicles. An alien intrusion. She walked through the heavy wooden doors, the scent of pine cleaner and old wood, once a smell of exhilarating escape, now a trigger for suffocating loss. Ranger Patterson, a stocky man with kind, sympathetic eyes, greeted her. Mrs. Henley, thank you for coming. This is Detective Morrison from the county sheriff's office. Detective Morrison was his opposite, a tall, severe woman with sharp cheekbones and iron gray hair in a tight bun. Her gaze was analytical, her posture ramrod straight. She extended a cool, dry hand. "I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances," she said, her voice flat. "Please, have a seat." They led her to a small conference room. There, on the polished table, sat Robert's backpack. It was a monstrous sight, a relic from a lost world. Waterlogged and stained with mud and algae, a long, vicious gash tearing across one pocket. But it was undeniably his. The gray and blue Osprey pack she'd bought him for his 60th birthday. The small, faded red carabiner he always clipped to the side, a silly little habit, was still there, caked in dried mud. A strangled sob escaped Charlotte's throat. "A pair of kayakers found it yesterday evening," Ranger Patterson explained gently. "It was lodged deep in a beaver dam, about 8 miles downstream from the spray park area. It's a miracle they saw it." Detective Morrison opened a manila folder, her movements crisp. "Mrs. Henley, we recovered the memory card from the GPS. The antenna was shattered, which is why we never got a ping. But the card retained the track log data." Charlotte leaned forward, a war waging in her chest, between irrational hope and crushing dread. What did it show?" "The data indicates your husband went deliberately and significantly off trail." The detective pointed to a large topographical map. Her nail landed on a remote, jagged section of wilderness, a place of sheer cliffs and untracked forest. "The last signal came from right here. It's nearly 3 miles from any marked path, in a section known for treacherous terrain. We dispatched a search and rescue team. We found nothing." "But Robert never went off trail," Charlotte protested, the words tasting like ash. "He was meticulous. He would lay his maps out the night before, trace his route with a highlighter. In 30 years, he never once deviated." Detective Morrison's expression remained a mask. "The GPS data is empirical, Mrs. Henley. He was miles from where he said he'd be. Given this, the remote location, and the 4 years that have passed, we are back to our original 2 high-probability scenarios: suicide or a tragic accident resulting from his decision to leave the trail." Suicide? The word was an obscenity. "Robert had just retired. We had plans. A cruise to Alaska. He was excited." "I understand this is difficult," the detective said, her tone softening by a bare degree. "But people's private struggles are often well hidden. With wildlife activity and natural decomposition, there would be little trace remaining. The exhaustive search yielded nothing. Frankly, Mrs. Henley, given our limited resources, there's nothing more we can do. We will not be reopening the case." The walls of the room seemed to close in. "You're giving up? You find this one piece of evidence after 4 years and you're just closing the book?" "We are being realistic," Morrison stated flatly, closing her folder with a snap that felt like a gavel. "Your husband, for reasons we will likely never know, went off trail into a dangerous, isolated area. The case will remain closed, classified as death by misadventure." While the detective took a call, Ranger Patterson helped Charlotte go through the backpack's contents. Through a blur of tears, she examined the ruined artifacts. His medical license, the plastic warped but readable. Robert James Henley, M.D. His hiking permit, the ink faded. His phone, its screen a spiderweb of cracks, filled with murky water, utterly destroyed. "The unusual thing," Ranger Patterson said quietly, "is where we found this. That beaver dam. For the pack to end up there, carried by the current, it would have had to enter the water from a very specific, very inaccessible place, upstream from the GPS coordinates." Charlotte stared at the objects, her mind refusing the official narrative. Robert, who checked weather reports 3 times, who carried backup batteries for his backup batteries. It didn't make sense. "Sometimes even the most experienced hikers make mistakes," the ranger offered. "Or sometimes People just don't want to be found. But Charlotte knew Robert. He would never leave her in this abyss of not knowing. As she left the station, clutching a bag with photocopies of the permits, she felt more lost than she had in 4 years. The official verdict was a lie. Sitting in her car, and the scent of pine now tainted forever, she couldn't go home. She needed to talk to someone who knew the Robert the police couldn't see in their data points. His former colleagues. The drive to Cascade Medical Associates was a journey through another minefield of memories. The practice had been sold 2 years ago. The friendly blue awning replaced by a corporate gray. The waiting room gutted and sterile. A harried office manager, however, found a familiar name. Sarah Winters is still here. She was Dr. Henley's lead nurse for years. 20 minutes later, Sarah rushed into the break room, her face creasing with concern. "Charlotte! Oh my goodness!" Sarah embraced her warmly. "What is it?" The words tumbled out of Charlotte. The backpack, the GPS, the police's cold conclusion. Sarah listened, her expression growing more troubled. "They think he went off trail deliberately, Sarah. They're suggesting suicide." "No," Sarah said, her voice firm. "That's impossible. He was ecstatic about retirement." The GPS showed him miles from any marked trail, Charlotte pressed. Sarah's expression shifted. She glanced toward the closed break room door, then leaned in. "You know, now that you mention it, Robert did seem different that final week." "Different how?" "Anxious," Sarah said, her voice dropping. "Distracted. He kept checking his phone. I asked him about it on that Wednesday, 2 days before he disappeared. He just gave this forced smile and said he had a lot to wrap up. It wasn't what he said, Charlotte. It was how he said it. And his hands were shaking when he picked up his coffee cup. In 15 years, I had never seen Robert's hands shake." A chill traced its way down Charlotte's spine. "Was there anything else?" Sarah hesitated. "This is probably nothing, but Dr. Harrison's behavior that week was odd." "Dr. James Harrison?" "Robert's boss, an old friend." "Harrison wouldn't let anyone help with Robert's patient transitions," Sarah continued. "He insisted on handling it himself. He was here until midnight several nights that week. I came back for my keys one evening, and his office light was on. I could see stacks of file boxes. The strangest thing is, he took them all home with him. He didn't store them in our secure records room." "You said Harrison sold the practice." "Made a fortune," Sarah confirmed. "Opened a new state-of-the-art practice across town. Very different from the Harrison who used to say, 'Patient care came first.'" After Sarah left, Charlotte sat alone. Robert anxious. Harrison working late, taking files home. A lucrative sale. It was a constellation of facts with no connecting lines. Yet, what had made Robert's steady surgeon's hands shake? The storage unit smelled of mothballs and time. After Sarah's revelations, Charlotte had to look through Robert's things with new eyes. She'd boxed up his home office, too grief-stricken to sort it. Now it was an archaeological dig. In the fourth box, wedged between two thick medical journals, she found it. Robert's leather day planner. Her fingers trembled as she flipped to the week he disappeared. Monday, October 12th. Staff meeting, 7 a.m. Tuesday, October 13th. Retirement party, 6 p.m. Wednesday, October 14th. Patterson and Associates, 2 p.m. Evening, review files. Thursday, October the 15th. Meeting with Chalkers Harrison. Trail. Parking lot, 7 a.m. Charlotte stared at the last entry, her world tilting. October 15th. The day Robert disappeared. He had told her he was hiking alone. But here, in its careful handwriting, was a planned meeting with Harrison. At the trailhead. Why had he lied? She flipped back to Wednesday's entry. Patterson and Associates. Digging deeper, she found a manila folder. Inside were 2 receipts from Patterson and Associates, employment law specialists. The consultations were dated October 7th and 14th. Robert had been seeing a whistleblower lawyer. Her heart pounding, Charlotte dialed the number from the letterhead. A paralegal named Miranda was on the line. "I'm limited in what I can share," she explained. "However, I can confirm that Dr. Henley's initial inquiry was regarding employment whistleblower protections. He specifically asked about protection from retaliation and how to properly document evidence. He was scheduled for a follow-up on October 16th, but he never showed. Mr. Patterson was quite concerned. He said, 'Doctor, Henley sounded very worried and kept asking if his family would be protected if he came forward.'" Protected from what? The question hung in the stale air. A hidden meeting. Secret consultations. Charlotte loaded the crucial boxes into her car. As she turned onto her street, she saw a familiar silver Mercedes in her driveway. Harrison's car. He was standing by her front door, talking to her neighbor. He turned, his familiar, handsome smile in place. But she saw it now. A tightness around his eyes. A tension his expensive suit couldn't hide. "Charlotte," he said warmly, "I heard about the backpack. The police contacted me. I wanted to see how you were." "That's kind of you, James," she replied, acutely aware of the boxes in her back seat. "I told Dr. Harrison you'd gone to your storage unit," her neighbor chimed in. Charlotte saw the flicker in Harrison's eyes at the mention of the storage unit. It was gone in an instant, but she'd seen it. "Sorting through old things?" Harrison asked, his voice casual but carrying an edge. "Find anything interesting? Sometimes going through old things can bring unexpected surprises." "Just memories," Charlotte said. "If you'll excuse me, James, it's been a long day." "Of course," he said, but then added, "If you need anything, Charlotte, please call." Robert was very important to me. I'd hate for his legacy to be tarnished by any misunderstandings. Misunderstandings. Inside, with the door locked, she peered through the window. Harrison was still there, standing by his car, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing sharply. The day planner sat in her purse, burning like a hot coal. The doorbell rang moments later. It was Harrison, his expression rearranged into one of gentle concern. Every instinct screamed no, but she saw an opportunity. "I was wondering," he said softly, "if you'd like to get coffee. Sometimes it helps to talk." At Corner Coffee, Charlotte chose a table in the busy main area, not the cozy back corner Harrison suggested. He returned with their drinks. Going through his things must be so emotional. Later, in the harsh light of an interview room, the full story came out. Detective Morrison sat across from her, her expression grim. "Harrison confessed," she said. "He and 2 accomplices met Robert at the trailhead. They followed him to a remote viewpoint. When Robert refused their final offer of money and said he was going to the FBI, they pushed him." Charlotte closed her eyes. "How?" "A 200-foot drop onto rocks," Morrison said gently. "Death would have been instantaneous. He wouldn't have suffered. The motive was massive insurance fraud, a network of corruption Robert had meticulously uncovered. The financial records, patient files that didn't match, unusual bank deposits. He was building a case. Your husband was a brave man, Mrs. Henley. He could have taken the money. Instead, he chose to do the right thing." An officer knocked and entered, whispering to Morrison. The detective's face softened. "Mrs. Henley," she said, her voice filled with a somber respect. "Based on Harrison's confession, they sent a helicopter to the cliff area. They found remains." The words were both a final, devastating blow and a release. 4 years of not knowing were over. Recovery teams are working to bring him home, Morrison said softly. Tears flowed freely down Charlotte's face. I can bury him, she whispered. I can give him a proper funeral. Yes, Morrison said. You can. As Charlotte left the station, the setting sun was painting Mount Rainier in shades of pink and gold. The mountain was no longer a monument to her loss. It was a testament to her husband's courage. Robert had died on its slopes, betrayed and murdered. But he died with his integrity intact. He had faced down an evil that festered behind a healer's mask, and had not backed down. Justice, delayed 4 long years, was finally coming, and Robert, was finally coming home. He began, his fingers starting a rhythmic tap against the table. Did you find any work files, any personal journals? Robert wasn't much of a journal keeper, Charlotte said, watching his jaw tighten. How about appointment books? He always carried that old leather planner. His attempt at casual interest was failing. Charlotte made a decision. Actually, I did find his day planner. Harrison's fingers stopped drumming. Oh? Yes. There was an entry on October 15th that confused me. She let the silence stretch. He'd written, meeting with Harrison. Trail parking lot, 7 a.m. But he told me he was hiking alone. The transformation was instant. The mask of concern shattered. A flicker of panic crossed his face, before being replaced by a hollow laugh. Oh, that. Poor Robert. He was so confused that morning. Called me around 6:30, sounding agitated. I tried to talk him out of hiking, but he insisted. Charlotte stared at the man she thought she'd known for 15 years, watching him construct a lie with terrifying ease. Charlotte! Harrison leaned forward, his voice dropping. I didn't want to burden you, but Robert had been showing signs of severe depression. The retirement was devastating for him. The lie was so blatant, it gave Charlotte a cold, clarifying anger. Robert hadn't been depressed. He'd had an appointment, and Harrison was desperate to hide it. I should go, she said, standing abruptly. Charlotte, wait, he said, rising too. If you found any documents, anything that could be misinterpreted, I hope you'll let me know. For Robert's sake. Robert's reputation doesn't need protecting, she said coldly and walked out. In the restroom, her hands shook so violently she could barely dial 911. I'm at Corner Coffee on Main, she whispered. I'm with someone I believe may be dangerous. Dr. James Harrison. Please send someone. When she walked back out, her heart stopped. Harrison had moved to her side of the booth, blocking her exit. There you are, he said, his smile a terrifying parody. The pretense was gone. Don't lie to me, Charlotte. What did you find? I need to leave, she said, trying to slide past him. He stood, his hand clamping on her elbow. Let me walk you to your car. It wasn't a request. In the near-empty parking lot, he spun her around, slamming her back against her car. Where are the files Robert kept? I know he made copies. I don't know what you're talking about. That's when she saw the gun. He pulled it from his jacket, the movement fluid, and pressed the cold metal against her ribs. Get in my car. James, please. Get in, he hissed, shoving her toward his Mercedes. Or I'll shoot you right here. He slammed the door, the gun now pointed at her across the console. He drove with one hand, leaving town behind, heading toward the winding roads that led to Mount Rainier. You should have kept out of this, he said, his voice eerily calm. You should have just accepted that Robert killed himself. You killed him, she whispered. Harrison's laugh was bitter. Robert killed himself the moment he decided to be a hero. He found discrepancies in the billing, Massive fraud. I was leveling the playing field against the insurance companies. But St. Robert couldn't see the gray areas. He was going to report me. Destroy everything. The familiar roads were a nightmare landscape. He turned onto a bumpy dirt road and pulled into a clearing. Get out! He shoved her toward a narrow trail leading into the trees, the gun pressed against her back. We're going to take a little hike, just like Robert did. They'd gone 50 yards into the deep woods when the first siren wailed in the distance. Harrison froze. No, he muttered. More sirens joined the first, screaming closer. He yanked her roughly against him, his arm clamping around her neck as he pressed the gun to her temple. Back off! He shrieked as red and blue lights strobed through the trees. Everyone back off or I'll kill her! Doctor! Harrison, Detective Morrison's voice boomed through a megaphone. Let Mrs. Henley go! The standoff stretched on. Harrison was trembling, ranting. I offered him money! Enough to travel the world, but no! He had to be noble. He had evidence. Copies of everything. Said he was going to the FBI. A negotiator took a slow step forward. It was too much for Harrison. With a sound between a sob and a snarl, he raised the gun and brought it down hard against the side of Charlotte's head. Pain exploded, and she was falling. The moment his shield was gone, Harrison ran. He made it 20 feet before two officers burst from the undergrowth, tackling him to the ground. He fought wildly, screaming as they cuffed him. You don't understand! He destroyed everything. My practice, my reputation. He destroyed it all with his righteousness. An EMT was pressing gauze to Charlotte's bleeding head as they dragged Harrison away, still raving. He wouldn't listen. I begged him. Where did it get him?